Yes.
So, good morning again, beloveds. Good morning. Today, as you probably know, is Easter. And it's considered by many to be a high spiritual time. A day that is celebrated around the globe. And it encompasses many traditions, and a lot of them handed down through generations and different institutions of religion, many with trumpets and fanfare and parades. A lot of the traditions are in our own families as well. And I am reminded by a celebration that Reverend Louie and I had one time in, of all places, New Orleans. That's a very spirited location. It is Catholic, parish, or organized. And so there's a lot of tradition in the Catholic order, if you will. And so we're out Easter Sunday, we're walking through the French Quarter and into Jackson Square, which is in front of the big Catholic church. There's a beautiful park with Andrew Jackson on his horse in bronze going, whew. Beautiful, beautiful day. And walking around doing a promenade are men dressed in mourning coats, cutaway, hats, straw hats, summer straw hats, ladies in pretty hats and parasols and long white dresses, sipping champagne out of a flute, promenading around the fountain. And they're being judged, I'm assuming, because we're just going, oh, isn't this beautiful? So we stand there for 30 minutes and take this all in. Upon the completion of that, they step into vintage, which is now vintage, 1960s convertibles. And there's about 8 couples. And off they go on a parade on Easter Sunday. 1 couple per car, waving. It's quite a sight. As they move on, we hear, woohoo! To our left, another parade is arriving. It's the Bourbon Street parade. It's quite different. The Grand Marshal is a woman from one of the nightclubs, who is a very stereotypical, yes, yes. She's well equipped for her job. And she's a real contributor to the community, I found out, in donations to the school, to the children. And so it's like, I had just pretty much gotten into ministry then, and I'm thinking, you know, I was kind of judging this at first by the appearance, you know, by the skin on the outside of the image of who I thought this person was. And so I have had a shift since then about when I see people. I want to know the backstory. I want to know what brought people to here. You know, how did you evolve? How did you emerge to this point of life? So the parade goes by. It's not very long, but it's very colorful. Behind the Grand Marshal float are 2 of her bodyguards, male bodyguards. And they are attired in hats and Easter dresses and Easter baskets. It was quite a sight, you know, full mustache, but well, it was another sight to behold. Handing out candy to children. The children were just, they had no judgment.
Yeah.
They said, oh boy, because there was so much love and giving. And so it was quite a contrast in about an hour of living to see all the different aspects of just that city with their Easter celebration. That was the segue I hadn't planned on, but I thought it was interesting to share that. And so many of us from here will continue on from this celebration to lunches, dinners, brunches, outdoor activities, whatever it might be, or maybe you'll create a new tradition this year. When I was growing up, we did Easter eggs. We colored Easter eggs. And I'm still partial to those. Hard-boiled Easter eggs. I love chocolate bunnies. I like to bite the ears off. And then the rest of it goes too. But that's my favorite. That's my favorite part. My favorite part. And I was born in the Chinese year of the rabbit. So I brought many examples of what I love in the forms of different rabbits today. And so, but these are different symbols in the sort of the marketing aspect of Easter. And some of these ideas are about, you know, a creation. They're about, you know, moving forward. The Easter bunny, you know, doesn't actually produce the egg, it provides the egg. Different story, different day. But it's about life. It's about life. It's about life. Today we talk about the spiritual aspect of Easter. This has been termed Holy Week. We're just completing what's called Holy Week. What is Holy Week? Begins with Palm Sunday, moves through the 7 days to Good Friday. Must have had a good meal on Good Friday, or it wouldn't be called Good Friday. So there's the Last Supper. Then we move into 3 days of Last Supper, and then crucifixion, and then in the tomb, resurrection. And so as I begin to look at this story, I put it to life, specifically my life, and which is all we can ever do. And from Palm Sunday, where you lay down, when you let go of what was, give up life as you knew it, the way is made easier for you. Palms are laid down towards your transformation, towards your transition. Because I believe Easter is about transitioning. It's the death of one idea or an old way, moving through this pathway, and then letting that idea die. Really letting it go. So that we can come to a period of going within, the 3 days of in the tomb of transformation, or the womb, or the tomb. A lot of great stories in our various world teachings on transformation and letting go and dying to something that was. And then, after this perfect period, 3 days, transformations happened. What was is no longer there. The tomb was empty. The physical sense was not there. What was is no longer. It's given over to a greater idea. And so, I really try and look at the stories that I grew up with in a more metaphysical way, a higher perspective way of seeing an old idea, because I want to always keep changing too. I want to keep evolving to something more than just today. Today's great. You love today? Today's great. Don't you love today? I love today too. What a treat. There's a transformation. There's a coming together for a new idea. And the birth of a baby. What a grand idea that is. And so, I know that as we move into the idea of some newness, it takes a great amount of faith. Faith and trust. Because faith is the starting point of our movement through the valley of the shadow of uncertainty. The valley of the shadow of death. When anything changes in our life, or we ask for a change, we get into change, there's grief. There is sadness. Part of us says, yeah, I won't let it go. And even though you know you want to let something go, it's been in your life for a long time, and part of us deep down grieve that. I do. But without letting something go, there's no newness. There's no newness. And as we move into our newness, what do we get to have? Something greater. Now, I am encouraging you not to necessarily define that greatness too tightly or too small. In the Science of Mind classes we teach, when we do our prayer treatments, we complete it with this or something greater. This is what I know I can accept now, or something greater. So you leave the door a little bit open for something else. Ernest Holmes tells us on the idea of faith. Pure faith is a spiritual conviction. It is the acquiescence of the mind, the embodiment of an idea, and the acceptance of a concept. So faith is conviction, embodiment, and acceptance. We have to move into an acceptance before we have that thing or that experience. Well, I want to talk about, for a small moment, a man that was named Jesus, because a lot of the stories are around him. So, and this is a metaphysical concept for you. Jesus arrived in Jerusalem, which is metaphysically is a foundation of peace, a constitution of harmony, a vision or an abode of prosperity. Nice, huh? Jerusalem.
Yeah.
So the idea of Jerusalem is this wonderful foundation, this peaceful grounding. And this grounding embodies the Christ consciousness, which is our divine idea within us. And then as a result of that, of his faith, all was laid before him. In the story of the Palms. And so Jesus moved into that acceptance of that pathway for him. He stepped peacefully, lovingly into it and moved through it toward the wonder of yet was to be known. It was uncertain. And so when Jesus was, in the story, nailed to the cross, which seemed to be the custom of the day, I'm glad we don't do that anymore. We have a different legal system. I think financially nailed to the cross, but maybe. The Christian faith believes the death of Jesus made it possible for we as humans to be forgiven of sin. That's the belief of the teaching. Now, metaphysically, in our teaching, and my belief is that there are numerous symbols that the crucifixion represents, and they relate to our good. The crucifixion crosses out our fiction. So when we come to a point of getting rid of our false belief, we cross that out. And that's what I use to eliminate, not necessarily the cross, but it's like X that out. We have a delete button on our computer. But somewhere in the computer, sometimes there's a little bit of, you have to really do your work to get rid of the old programming. So we have the cross and the nails. I love the symbolism of the nails. Sometimes our old stories need to be nailed down for us. We get to be nailed for them. And that's where a practitioner comes in really helpful, because they will nail us with love. They will see the false idea and call it to a higher truth. So being nailed is not necessarily a bad thing in this teaching. It's being called forward out of an old idea that's pounded deeply maybe within us. The third, the sword. He did the sword in the side. Well, the sword is a part of the teaching. Metaphysically now, I think that the sword, which is a new idea, reaches our inner soul, our consciousness, allowing that human condition that we've held on so strongly to, allow it to be released and let go. So, the symbols are very powerful if we take them out of the face value and look a little deeper or a little higher. And the fourth is the crown of thorns that symbolized he was mocked and ridiculed and left to die. But this crown of thorns was, in my mind, was a moment of showing his pure faith. That there was some greater idea, a higher idea. And that we are the ruler of our own consciousness, our own mind. Because what did he say? What is he quoted as saying? They know not what they do. They know not what they do. Infinite wisdom, Father, they know not what they do. So people come at us many times with fear, trepidation, and they'll want to nail us, they'll want to they want to be right many times. And so we get to be, if we choose, we get to stand there and say, infinite goodness, you know, I know the truth of who I am, and they know not what they do. One of my favorite thoughts that I like to hold and know is, God loves you, and I'm trying. Now, I don't have to say that because it's a little flip. I know that's flip. But it helps me not go to the place of judgment. I can stay at a higher, loving place. So, God loves you and I'm trying. I'm sure it's been used towards me too, in my life. And so, Ernest Holmes tells us, as we recognize our oneness with infinite intelligence, we are set free from uncertainty and pain. So resurrection for me happens when the burdens, the stones of illusion, are permanently removed. It is there we see with an eye for truth and love and for wisdom, which is God. Which is God. We're seeing from that higher perspective of what is really true about life and ourselves. I believe the Easter story is our individualized personal prophecy. Transitions, as I mentioned earlier. The death of the old and moving into a newness. And it's sort of a spiritual archaeology, I've decided too. That if you look more closely, we can see that there has been a layering of belief, not just in our lives, but in the lives of, in the history of the teachings of the resurrection. I want to read something out of the Science of Mind textbook which supports this. And it's in the chapter on what the mystics have taught. God moves upon God. This is the starting point of creation. Every time one conceives an idea, it is God expressing itself. He is eternally knowing and eternally known through everyone, God is. It is God's nature to know, and there is an emotional craving or desire for expression inherent in the universe. There is a universal law obeying the will of Spirit. This is the law through which that which is involved evolves. Say that again. This is the law through which that which is involved evolves. So it's where our thinking resides, where our belief is, say, stewing, that it manifests in our life. We as conscious spirit set a universal law in motion which makes things from ideas. The spirit involves and the law evolves. So at every moment we are evolving. At every moment we are making a transition from one idea to the next. We are creating out of what we know, our history, our archaeology. And so as we move into this newness, it takes a bit of focus and clarity and understanding. It's not difficult. It's really easy. It's really easy. The most difficult part for most of us is finding out what we really, truly believe about ourselves. So, from Palm Sunday through Good Friday to Easter Sunday, all is in perfect order. I urge you to take a closer look at what the Easter message means to you and the beliefs that are being cherished by you. Your spiritual layering. And so I have two questions. I love questions. Are you creating your experience from old beliefs of, I have to die to this human experience to feel newness or love or joy or heaven? Or are you entering your own Jerusalem, creating a life filled with forgiveness, peace, love, with an awareness of life as a renewable resource, a life with ongoing eternal resurrection? Because I think it is. I think it is. And so as I conclude here, I would like to share some words from Raymond Charles Barker. Love Raymond Charles Barker. Within you is an unconquerable mind, which, as you see your problem and deflate it, acts through your positive thinking under a law, and the problem is met. It is met on time and in order. It is met because it is normal for life to meet problems. When life finds a soul that will be positive enough to let it do it through you. And so, beloved, as Jesus shared the truth that all he did, we could do. He was not alone. He was not the lone Mohican or soldier or whatever. All he did was done without resistance or fear. It was done with love. And so, be the gift this Holy Week, Easter Sunday. Lay down your palms and allow your spirit to support you, because it does. And remember, resurrection happens. Let it happen. Then emerge as a spiritual blessing in life, in yours, in mine, in everyone around you. Because the way is always perfectly prepared. And so it is.
So it is.